Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and I've got filmmaker Ramone Menon with me. Hey, Ramone.
Hey, Jeff. How you doing?
I am excellent. All right, so Ramone and I are on Zoom. So flat out disclaimer, if you don't care for our audio quality, don't blame us. We were forced to use Zoom. It'd be much better if we were in person. We each actually have, we are drinking responsibly during this podcast, but yes. I've got a Guinness. You've got a Sapporo.
I got a Sapporo, and it's the middle of the day. I usually would have gone for a Belgian triple or something, but right now I think the Sapporo will save me from saying something I might regret.
Well, yeah, and by the way, feel free to say things you'll regret, but don't ask me to edit because I like to record these live, no editing.
Well, let's hope that I'm not going to have to. I do know where you live, though, Jeff. So.
You do, because you came to pick up a trophy. And now I'll just go ahead and talk about that part. To introduce you, Ramone is the writer and director of a film called The Pay. And The Pay is a short horror film that won the Grand Jury Prize for Best Short Film Horror at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2021. So you won Best Horror Short. And I'll add that it's a highly competitive film festival. I think you were at many screenings. We don't show a bad film at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival. And so it was a delight to see your film win Best Horror Short and a delight to hand a trophy to you at my doorstep.
It was fantastic to be able to have the honor to play at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in the first place, because I've heard a lot about the festival for many years. I never had attended it. And then when I did finally get to attend it, because we were playing there, the quality of all the movies was stunning. And I just felt that I was just lucky to be a part of it. And then what it was even better was meeting Jeff and all the other filmmakers in an environment that allowed us to just totally open up, talk shop, and not just have this very constricted professional environment about it, but it also had a very freeing, artistic, engaging environment that Jeff was great at promoting. You were awesome at just keeping everyone high-spirited. It was such an intimate festival, and I also felt like all the Q&As were very well curated by you, and you really cared. You could tell that you really cared about each and every one of the filmmakers and their process. And I felt like, there's a lot of film festivals we go to, and for whatever reason, time or not, they just don't get, the filmmakers, especially the short filmmakers, don't get the time to explain their process. And some of the movies are absolutely stunning, even sometimes way more creative than features as well. And I still think that you're one of the festivals that gave every filmmaker the platform to explain their process, so that when we went and started mingling with them, that we could ask even more pertinent questions that just expanded upon what the process was. So for that, I have to say thank you.
Yeah, honestly, myself and the team that does Sherman Oaks Film Festival and Film Invasion LA in June, we joke that our motto is the festival that gives a shit, but we really do feel like the whole if it was just about watching films, everyone could just stay home and watch the same thing on Netflix that night,
Oh, yeah.
But a film festival is about watching something together in person and discussing it. I've never understood. We're in a small neighborhood theater that has an intimate feel and then I think more than half the time that we book is devoted to Q&A. We'll watch 30 minutes of films and then have 45 minutes of talking about them, because that's the whole purpose. Otherwise, you might as well just stay home, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like a lot of the more entertaining parts of a film festival are the Q&As. Even I find myself, even if I don't attend, say a Sundance or one of another festival that they do these extended Q&As, I'm looking for those Q&As. I'm actually on go to YouTube or wherever, and I seek them out, because I feel like just for me as a filmmaker or as a film lover as well, it's so much more entertaining and engaging and just enlightening to do that process. So, and your Q&A style, I have to say, is fucking funny. It's not just, oh yeah, we're all going to talk cinema and
Well, you were also, I think, in a fun block. I mean, when we have a block of tragic, realistic dramas about abusive relationships, we don't exactly curse as much and joke as much. But yeah,
oh yeah,
I appreciate it though, and I sincerely appreciate it. And by the way, I mean, I found you are a very charming, personable guy, and whether it was at the mixers or other people's screenings, you came and supported other filmmakers. And then, you actually did that. For anyone listening to this, if they go to ShermanOaksFF.com and at the top it says festivals and you go to 2021 and you can go to the Q&As, I guarantee anyone who watches your Q&A, I think you probably had been across the street at maybe the Boneyard Bistro or something and had a couple beverages and you came in.
Yeah.
And by the way, your award-winning film, best short film horror, but you got up there. I'll always remember you sat down and you just started saying, "This goddamn film."
Well, that's it's part of the allure to go to these festivals just so I can talk some shit. And
because this beast has tortured you for a long time.
Oh yeah. I mean, it has, and I feel like it's been an entertaining run, like for me, but also just the chance to meet all you guys, all the amazing festival directors, all the people, the team that put the festivals together, all the other filmmakers. I mean, even in the Sherman Oaks one, I met so many great ones, and then and returning friends as well that I'd seen. Like Christian was there with Escalation. By the way, if anyone's listening, there's a movie. This guy named Christian Bianchi. I'm sure I'm. Bacchini, sorry. I knew Bacchini. I knew I was butchering it, but he deserves it. But he's asshole, but amazing filmmaker. Probably one of the most talented directors out there. Check out his movie. We had a great run, and we attended many festivals together. So
for sure, and I believe Escalation, got the awards you did, and like you guys were both head to head in the horror category, but both super well made, super entertaining, and yes. Actually, well, I want to focus on you because I could bring up that I follow your social media and I know that you and your friend Christian, but you are a festival connoisseur. I mean, you have not held back on hitting the festival circuit hard with your film. But let's go back. What were your inspirations for getting into film?
So I mean, ever since I was a kid, I always loved the TV. It was just something I was like the kid in the Poltergeist, just fucking go see the TV. I'm like, holy shit, this looks like my kind of thing. And I was really into the Tom and Jerry cartoons to start off with. I think that was like my first intro to like great storytelling. I was like, look, it's all visual. They're not saying one thing, and I totally get the emotion behind the whole, behind the stories. I felt it's probably some of the best storytelling. Just see, and the same thing, cat and mouse going at each other, this rivalry for the ages. So I was really into that. My dad has always been, he's a big cinema fan. So he's introduced, so a lot of the credit to the kind of history of cinema that I'm used to is because of him, because he'd introduced me to all this stuff. He'd say, oh, you like Tom and Jerry? You're going to probably like these other guys, Laurel and Hardy. And then from Laurel and Hardy, I was like, okay, what else? They'd be like, Duck Soup. Have you ever heard of Duck Soup? And I'm like, hell. I was like, Duck Soup, I was like, oh, that sounds great. But then I saw the cover. I was like, what the hell is this black and white bullshit? It's like, it's four guys standing on this cover looking. I said, it looks cheap, looks old. He's like, you're going to watch it. I think I saw it when I was like 6 or 7. And I just couldn't stop laughing because I was like Groucho Marx and his brothers and Margaret Dumont, the woman that is always the victim. And there's the villain. I forgot the actor's real name, but in the movie, his name's Trentino. And that the rat-a-tat dialogue, and the visual gags and everything, I was like, this is cinema in a totally different style. So I was really into that. And I was like, then I was a big fan of reading mysteries, like murder mysteries of like Agatha Christie and all that stuff. So I was like, I think I'm going to be a writer. I think I'm going to try to write one of these. And then very soon, like I got to like page 20 of like my mystery novel at age 8 or something. And I realized, well, I don't think this writing thing is for me. It's kind of lonely and sad. And I'm staring out of a window and my handwriting is terrible too, because I didn't want to type. So I was like, but it seems like I'm more keen on drawing. So I used to draw out these stories instead and kind of do like these comic panels instead. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to do my own Tom and Jerry and my own Marx Brothers. But eventually there was this one day that I walked in and my dad was watching this movie, and it was a bunch of bees against a window. And then there's some guy getting attacked by the bees. And I was like, what the hell is this? And he said, oh, it's a movie called The Amityville Horror. I was like, oh, looks interesting. And I settled in to watch it. And then it scared the absolute shit out of me. Like, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was watching part of it. And then my mother walked in. I was like, get out of here. Come on. What the fuck are you doing to my son? Get him out of here. But it was done. It was already whatever he wanted to accomplish by making me watch The Amityville Horror, it was set. So ever since then, I was like, how do I recreate that? Because I've never been as scared since. So ever since then, I found that my dad had this weird little handy cam. I think it was one of those. Was it Hi8? Yeah, I guess it was Hi8. It was like those fat little tapes that you put in. It was past the VHS and all that. But I used to take those cameras and start making my own little like horror movies with my brother, and it kind of felt like Scooby-Doo meets Dracula, or Scoob. Yeah, it always had a weird tone where there was a very Scooby-Doo element on one side, but then there was like a very like Omen element on the other. So tonally, it was all over the place. But I felt like that's when I realized I feel like I want to do this.
Were you like playing with that camera, like editing in camera and all that?
Yeah. I was editing in camera, which is a pain in the ass because you have to like say, okay, this is the shot, and then you cut exactly. So you have to, the next shot, you have to say action and then press record because you have to cut out the action word itself. So it was so annoying because we couldn't do it again. If we had to do it again, we had to rewind it to the exact point and even if it's like one frame off, you're going to see that little skip. You're going to see that little skip that comes in, which happened from time to time. But for the most part, I got pretty good at it to like get to the point. I was almost like, I'd rather see the skipped frame than see like a frame of blue where I've like kind of almost missed a spot. So we used to do that, which actually was good training for me for later on, because I was like, I need to storyboard the shit out of this. Like I need to do this like a comic book where I know the angle and I know it, and we rehearse the shit out of it, and then we shoot the shot. So
yeah, well, I was going to say, when you talked about writing and then you talked about doing comic booky sort of graphic additions to it. I mean, comic books are storyboards. That's why comic book movies are actually so. I mean, every graphic novel I've ever seen, whether they're serious or funny or whatever, I always think it's just it really is the same as storyboarding.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the best storyboards. Like even now till today, I'm like, I pull out like a Junji Ito book or like like an Alan Moore comic, and then I'm like looking through it to see like, okay, how are these guys figuring this shit out, and I'm making this flat looking shot. So I felt like that was my like initial start into wanting to make movies. But this was all in India too, by the way. So I almost feel like people were more willing to help out over there. Like I'd get like, hey, you get in, can you come in and just do this one thing and go away? And they'd be like, okay. And, and it was almost like a weird, like, like a spaghetti Western where everyone's talking in their own language. Like you bring this international cast and they're like, and you're just like, okay, fine. You just have to go with it. And then there'd be like people speaking in another language too, randomly.
And because you were in India, like you could just go to a store and say, "Hey, can I shoot a couple scenes of my movie here?" And people would let you.
To a certain extent, that either they'd say no, fuck off, or they'll say, hurry up. Like you got one shot, now get the fuck out. Like, so we couldn't just sit there and just like ruminate about the whole thing. Like, how am I going to get the shot? Like, okay, fine, let's just go. So we used to do a lot of that, but luckily a lot of my stories were more domestic and kind of leaning towards like house horror or like murder mysteries and stuff. So I was like, I kind of got lucky with that. Once in a while we go to a lake or some shit to try to have a very expansive background. Then I'll say, oh, this is our Lawrence of Arabia day, like where we have trees and shit in the background. But for the most part, we try to keep it contained because I felt like anytime we went outside, the sound started to suck balls. So I was like,
so when you would watch back what you'd done, you were learning about the value of indoor shoots and sets and things because you were being your own critic, which is smart.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And learning through experience.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because anytime we went and shot this whole thing outside once, like we shot like a kung fu fight with with the secret agent and a guy dressed as a flower, which was weird, very gonzo. But the first thing, and then they're talking through the fight, and I couldn't hear a damn thing when we went back home. And I was like, what a waste, all that energy, all that time, and what a piece of shit this has turned to be. So ever since then, I was like, let's try to keep it contained, and which is almost kind of been my mantra even now, to be honest. Like anytime, because we're working on budgets that are not the biggest, so we always want to try to keep it contained in a way that we have full control and you feel like we can take the time to get it right.
Yeah. So in other words, you are finding your happy place in between getting quality done. You understand what it takes to get the quality you're after.
Yes.
Because I'm just judging by the pay alone. The pay, looks fantastic. The effects are great. And
thank you.
You obviously don't want to just shoot something, there's the indie films that have a great idea and they're just made cheap and dirty and you can tell they don't care. And that's an aesthetic I can appreciate.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your aesthetic too, where you're also seeking a level of professionalism.
Yeah. Because I love like gritty, rough cinema as well. Like I just, when somebody just takes a camera and runs out and man bites dog. Sure. I'm all for it. I love that idea. It's very spontaneous cinema. I wish I had the balls to do that more often. Like just to be like, fuck it, we're going to go run and gun on the street, neorealism or French New Wave. Godard died yesterday, so I have to mention him. So, I would love to have that kind of courage to go outside and just say, fuck it, we're making the Breathless of LA, But I feel like I'm a little bit more of a pessimist when it comes to that we're not going to get that shot. It's almost like it kind of my younger days of trying to do this out on the streets have taught me you're not going to get your fucking wannabe Orson Welles shot out on the street. There's no way, So that's the reason I try to see, at least for now, I'm not saying I won't do it in the future, but at least for now, I try to keep it more contained to single locations or in interiors, or even if we do exteriors, I try not to have dialogue in it.
For sure. And it also seems like you got the Amityville, that exposure. Has it always been fairly horror focused? No,
actually, the horror was there because I just loved that whole style. But the stuff that I really liked, honestly, are the Westerns. Like I really love all the Sergio Leone stuff, like Once Upon a Time in the West, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That's probably one of my favorite movies. I even really liked the John Ford Western, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. To me, that's one of the greatest movies that ever made. And even I like the rougher Italian ones too. Like there's this movie called The Great Silence Was it called The Great Silence? The Grand Silence. No, Great Silence. With Klaus Kinski as the villain. It actually has, spoiler alert, but it has one of the most depressing endings ever for a movie. The Great Silence. You got to watch it. It's a Western set in the snow. It's an amazing Western. And I remember I was watching this as a kid, again, thanks to my dad having all these like VHS tapes and all these like DVDs, that I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this shit? It actually says on the cover, the most depressing movie you will ever see. Like, who makes a claim like this on to sell the movie? So I feel like it was a lot of Westerns and also a lot of gangster movies too. Like, I really liked the black and white gangster movies, like White Heat, Angels with Dirty Faces, and also the film noirs. I almost felt like the Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep, The Big Heat, all the bigs, The Big Clock.
It is funny how many of them are The Big Something.
Yeah, I'm going to make one my The Big Something. I'm not going to say what the second word is, but I'm sure you can guess what it is.
Well, but what I was trying to get at is when you started making your own films.
Yeah.
Were they more? Have you just played with every genre and a lot of comedy?
I feel like, yeah, we used to make like these like what in India we just call it the masala movie, which is like you just take everything and just fucking throw it in there. So it would have like, it was almost like Roger Corman movies where it would start off as a comedy, then all of a sudden you have this like epic Western setting, or like the style would be like a Sergio Leone movie or something like that. And then all of a sudden the movie would become black and white in another section. I'm a big fan of episodic cinema. So it would go into black and white, then entering its film noir element. And then it would end in a crescendo in a very horrific way. So I felt like I was kind of messing about with all the genres in the same movie, which is good in one way, but it also fucked me up because I have no discipline. I'm almost like I'm writing these horror scripts right now, and I'm like, fuck, I have the best line for it. But can I say this? It's just gonna totally like just rip this movie to shreds. And I can't help it, and I still throw it in, and then of course we'll do a rehearsal, and they'll be like, "What the fuck is this? Get it out of there."
I was about to react though with what you were saying. Is I think what you were just saying about, I'm just going to call them sequences, is missing from a lot of modern cinema, because nowadays everyone focuses on keeping the tone the same and staying in the story. And I love it whether it's a horror film that shifts into a 7-minute noir sequence and then shifts back. I think that's great. I think it's great as a viewer when the filmmaker breaks things up and gives you different vibes and different elements. And clearly anyone who's listening, I mean, you are into horror and you are into, like, The Pay truly is scary, but there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of intelligence behind it, with the layers and a lot happening at once. So it's good to hear you say that, I'm trying to give you an encouraging voice to say, yes, be a little all over the map, because I think that's what's missing. I think people nowadays try to focus too much.
Yeah. I mean, we'll definitely get into it when a little bit more detail of exactly which movie I'm talking about. But, I might as well say it. Psycho, for instance. That's one of my favorite movies, is because I have no fucking idea where this movie's going. This movie starts off, I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you just see the title, you've sold me already by calling it Psycho. I don't need to see the trailer. I'm going to go in there. Oh, it starts off as a movie about a fucking woman robbing her employer. Then all of a sudden it becomes this story about, is this tortured motel owner going to get with this girl or not? Is she going to get caught? I mean, it goes into the whole police chase sequence, and then arriving at the motel, the mother's arguing. Do you think that the mother is like this fucking side character? Is she going to report the girl or not? And then you have this fucking amazing shower sequence of murder. then you change character, and it becomes a detective story, and then he gets fucking off, and then it becomes what's her face, the girl that Hitchcock made all dowdy. I'm forgetting her name, but anyway, it becomes a sister.
Lee, right?
It's a sister of Janet Leigh in the movie.
Oh, right.
But anyway, she becomes the main character, and then you have this great twist ending.
Yeah, I know, and like you said, I mean, I bet a lot of people haven't seen Psycho, but most people don't realize it does start as a heist film.
Yeah,
I mean, you go back and watch The Exorcist, and the first sequence is about archaeology.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you don't have to be a one-note film from the beginning.
It honestly, I don't want to piss on all the movies that do have that, because I feel there's an efficiency to do it. Like, a movie like Phone Booth, or like a movie like Don't Breathe, or some stuff like that. Like they just get to the story and they just stick there. But I do love the episodic nature of movies that kind of introduce a new set of characters, and then you're almost like off-footed for a little bit, and like, where am I? But then with a good director, you very soon pull back into like, oh, I see how this is going to tie in to the story. Recently, I know it's not probably everyone's favorite movie, but Nope, the Jordan Peele one. There's a great sequence in the middle, and it's almost like, what the fuck does this have to do with the rest of the movie? But you just know subconsciously that it does.
You're talking about on the TV set?
Yeah. No, the one, on the TV set, on the TV show.
Set within Nope, yes. That it goes back to the Stephen
attack.
Young's characters.
Exactly.
That was.
I loved it. I was like, I don't know what the fuck this is doing here. What does this have to do with that thing in the sky? But I don't want to ruin it. But
we can.
Oh,
if people haven't seen Nope by now, shame on them.
Shame on you. Yeah, exactly. No, well, it's a fucking it's a Jaws in the sky movie. And
exactly what it is. The shark is Jaws in the sky, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's an amazing movie, but you have the sequence in the middle that I thought was the best scene of the whole thing. And I'm like, if this guy was a new first-time director and he still had this vision, they wouldn't have allowed him to do it. They wouldn't have. They'd have told him, Jordan Peele, sorry, fuck you, we're not going to let you do it. But he finally was able to get to the point where he's like, no, I'm going to do this stuff, like with the standing up shoe and all that. I loved all that. It's kind of like it's like 2001. Like it goes all over the place. What is this monolith? We don't know, but we just know that it's going to tie in. I feel there's not enough movies that are doing this style of having the balls at the start to not know where the rest of the story is going. Like you have to. I hate the idea that I'm going into a movie and I kind of know the trajectory because we want the safe 3-act structure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, so back to you. So you were experimenting with camera, all kinds of things. Did you get to do it in school? Did you make it your focus when did you take place in drama departments, or was it always on your own time?
Well, for the most part, it was on my own time with my brother and our friends who were very cooperative. And one day I hope to thank them all for the shit I put them through, because we were doing like great practical effects and all that stuff too at the time. But I did try doing acting for a little bit in high school just to see just what it felt to be on the other side. I was like, oh shit, this is difficult as hell, but it was good to just do that. But I was like, I don't think I could ever do it again because it's so, just feels like you're too exposed. That's why I really appreciate actors for what they do. So what I did was, after that, I went to college and I did a double study with film production and business administration, because I was like, I need to know how to run this as a business as well. Just so that I'm not all artsy fartsy it's all just about being an artsy fartsy dude with my pipe in my mouth and just, like, let me think about how I'm going to be the next Antonioni.
And that was for you. That was for you. That wasn't like, the film major is for me and the business major is for my folks. It was actually for you.
It was for me. Yeah. Because I had to know, that I could run it. Like I could run it as a business as well, because it was not like a backup, because some people were like, oh, are you doing it because you want it to be a backup in case you don't do the film thing? I'm like, no, fuck no. This is for me to understand how I can make them both meld together. Because one thing that I feel like the film schools, the programs that I was looking at, that they don't teach you, they'll teach you producing, but they don't teach you the business side of it. Like, how do you run it as a production company? They teach you how to run one film, but they don't teach you how to run it like if you had to make a slate of movies. How do you run a company? And I feel like that's still lacking, and that's what kind of almost kills a lot of people's businesses or careers very early on. If you just kind of tell them, because the smart ones always do the ideas of making commercials and making music videos and treat it as a business to ensure that they get to the feature stuff. But I feel like film schools can kind of lean into that a little bit more. So that's what I did. And then after that, I started working at a couple of production companies just to understand the process.
And by the way, where'd you go to university?
Chapman University. It's
Chapman. So you came over to California.
Yes, that was my intro. Like I was fresh off the boat, and
Chapman's got a good film program. Actually, people should not snooze on that because I see a lot of good stuff from Chapman.
Oh, it's amazing! Like their school, the Dodge College of Film and Media, outstanding. Like it's got some of the best resources. I mean, they got sound stages, they got mocap stages. I mean, great documentary programs, scoring. It's amazing. It was like a kid in a candy store. Like it was that kind of a vibe. And you cannot talk shit about how great they were. Like they were awesome. Got to meet some really cool filmmakers and other students. And it's in this town of Orange, which is really nice to kind of be, you're like close enough to LA, but you're still farther enough that you can go to like the local drugstore and kind of, if you really want, get that as your location. You could go to the local train station if you really want. You can get that as your location. You try doing that in LA at like USC, UCLA, that's tough. That is tough. So it's a little oasis out there in Orange, which is great.
And also, I mean, I know there's some film theory classes there, but a lot of practical, right? Like you hit the ground running and got to start playing with equipment and making things right away.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like they teach you the aesthetic stuff and all that, like the theories and all that, but immediately they want you directing, they want you writing, they want you producing, they want you to score. And I feel like they've only gotten better. They've only gotten better, like because you see some of the movies coming out of there now. They're like professional level. They look legit. I mean, like when I was there, the budgets that you had to spend were kind of on the higher side comparatively, but I still feel like in a way you have to see if it's worth it and you're telling the story efficiently. And if it is, then you should spend the money to get it there, because that's another lesson that I learned. Like I would be like, oh, that's too expensive. Let's do 3 movies instead of that one. But if you're really like chopping it down too much, this is more for like people like film students and stuff. If you're chopping the movie down too much, you're almost like cheating yourself out of this one cool movie that could possibly help you jump 3 steps. And you're trying to go make these 3 $10 movies that you'll learn, but you kind of restricting your imagination a little bit. So I feel like it's a double-edged sword when it comes to the low budget approach as well, especially with film school.
Yeah, for sure. But at least you had tons of people to collaborate with and crew up easily, which is so helpful.
Yeah. The only thing that I felt, I mean, I'm being totally honest, like, because it is a lot of money. If you had to pick, because you have to pick amongst your students, your fellow students, sometimes that choice was difficult as to like, who do I pick? Because there'll always be like two great cinematographers and everyone wants them, right? And then they're booked and they're gone. And then now all of a sudden you're the big project that you planned is being given to somebody who is not totally there yet. So that's the point when you have to start getting realistic and saying, okay, should we dumb it down now because this is what this crew is capable of? It's an honest approach. I'd love to say, oh yeah, you should just do it with anybody and give everybody a chance, which you should, but you should also be realistic with your approach.
That is, I mean, my God, you are naming the thing that so few people realize, which is you're only as good as your crew.
Oh yeah.
And you know, if you want to know how Kevin Costner was able to make an Oscar caliber film, it's because there was an Oscar caliber crew around him. And even if he really didn't know what he was doing, and actually he really didn't, I won't say who, but my friend's father was one of the key creatives working for him on Dances with Wolves.
Yeah.
And he would like come home and say, boy, this guy really doesn't know what to do. And we're just having to carry him along, from the editor to the cinematographer to everyone. But anyway, yeah, it's, you are only as good as the talent that you've brought on.
Yeah, 100%. And you should kind of gauge that with their previous work, their understanding of what you're talking about, your current project. And it, as painful as it is, you should try to test it out, to do a couple of test shots. Do, you know, like not with the whole crew, but like at least with the main guy, the main cinematographer, or like the main actor or whatever, just to understand the limitations. Because the worst thing is, like, I've gone on, like, I just like, oh yeah, they're all going to be great. And I've gone on to shoot a movie and I'll be like, oh my God, I really wish I prepped the shit out of this a little bit more, you know, like because there's always ways to work around as long as you understand your limitations. Because there's limitations on you as a director, you know, like there's certain things that you're just not good at. And then you should kind of find a way to figure that part out. Same thing with the cinematographer, with your budget, and even with your actors or music, whatever. If there's always a workaround, like it's almost like there's this guy who's done this. He made the new Predator movie, and he was talking about how he did his short film. Forgot what the short film was called, but if you look him up, it's the main one that kind of, he went from that to 10 Cloverfield Lane. And he was talking about it. And he said he was working with a crew of amateur actors. And he just felt like when certain moments of, it was a very dramatic movie. And so when certain moments did not play, he just decided, you know what? I'm just going to have them talk to each other. And I'm going to play some music over this. And I'm just going to visually tell the story like it's a silent movie. And I mean, it's such a simple fix, and it's something that everyone thinks of, but when you're in the weeds of the movie, you don't see that. You don't see that, oh, there is another fix. You know, if this performance is not working here, I'm sure there's another way. Cut to this insert, or like, what is the visual way of doing it? So I mean, I always kind of try to turn back to all the Alfred Hitchcock stuff, because there's that book, the Truffaut Hitchcock, that everyone loves. And I'm always like, whenever I'm lost, I'm always like, okay, let's just go back to this. It's almost like the Bible for me. Like, I'm like, okay, let's go back to this and see, are there any tricks in here that I'm missing? Because there always is a trick. And I'm like, this guy's got like 300 pages worth of tricks that he's just sat there. And of course, he sat there with Francois Truffaut, and he smoked like these cigars with him. And he's obviously like just totally chilled and given all the secrets. And I'm like, no one, even though we all think we know the Hitchcock movies, it's the little things that really, the little details that really you should dig into. And I feel like there's so many more tricks that I need to figure out.
And listening to your story, your entire life, starting out as a kid, you clearly understood that filmmaking is about overcoming the limitations around you, of looking at your limitations and making the most of it, right? Because yeah, if you have, whether it's your DP or your camera or your actors, you can do something fresh with it. You just have to be aware of what you've got, and you don't demand Schindler's List cinematography from a team that can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I start off with saying, "Oh, can we do it like Schindler's List?" And then the DP is like, "Well, if you give me sure, but but you just got me with two fucking flashlights. So what are we gonna do with the two flashlights?" And I was like, "Okay, I see what you're talking about. You don't need to be so fucking rough about it, but sure." I get it.
Excellent. All right, so Chapman, sounds like Chapman was a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
Did you make a film a year, 2 films a year there?
I think we made probably like a film. In the first year, I know we didn't make anything. The second year, 2. Third year, 2. Fourth year, 2. But I would say, I wouldn't really even want to bring up any of those because I was like, what the fuck is this shit? I refused to do my thesis movie. I kind of skirted through that because I said, I think I'm going to save my money and put it into a small, very low budget feature and try to see, can I tell a story over 80 to 90 minutes instead of doing this big budget short? A lot of people thought, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But I was like, I think that's what I'm going to do. And I was actually pretty happy about that because literally as soon as I came out of Chapman, I went and did the feature very soon, just so I could learn the from start to finish how to handle a full feature. Because I felt like I needed to almost get into that marathon mode. Because a short, the prep, I feel, is very similar to a feature, but the filming part, I feel, is so different because you can handle 3 days of stress, I think, comparatively. But can you handle 14 days, 15 days of stress nonstop? And I wanted to almost put myself through that. And that's why, even though I did the shorts in Chapman, I kind of held back a little bit just so I could try to plan a feature right after it. So I could hire my cinematographer from Chapman, but make sure that the crew he hires, could be a little bit, people who actually are possibly even getting paid.
Fantastic. And that wasn't any problem as far as getting your degree. They didn't.
No.
Passing on the thesis was fine because you'd already done enough work.
Because I did another film. It's just that I didn't do the big thesis, like that's what I mean. Like I did another movie instead, but it was very pared down. So it was something that I was willing to take a hit on. Like, so everyone was like, "Oh, you made this little black and white little crummy gangster thesis while everyone else is doing all this bigger stuff." And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of knew what the game plan was.
Well, and you already had your plan to make a feature very soon out of school, basically?
Yes. Yeah.
I went right into it.
Yeah. Probably within a year and a half to 2 years, I think. Year and a half to 2 years.
Right. And also, you had made so many shorts, I guess you knew you could, so you were really wanting to test that feature length.
I don't know if I knew I could. I was almost like, I was questioning myself, can I actually do this? Because, the shorts, again, were like short, they were good, but they were all like very contained and very like made with very few people on the crew. So it was more like diving in head first to the feature. I feel almost the feature taught me the actual filmmaking style of things. Chapman taught me how to collaborate with people. I feel like Chapman at the time, it's not that it didn't work for somebody else. Just for me personally, I felt like I was more keen on learning how to delegate. Like how do you explain your vision to somebody else?
Which is actually an excellent point, that explaining your vision to others is as important or more important than having a vision. Because if you have a vision and you can't communicate it to collaborators, you got nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like because I was kind of spoiled in a way of doing all those like movies when I was a teenager and shit with my brother and the friends, because I was doing everything, right? So I was almost like, oh, I don't need to explain this to anybody. I just need to explain it to the actors or like, the friends and my brother, and we're going. But to get out of that mentality was tough. To be like, oh shit, I have to trust a cinematographer to see the same shot. I have to trust the music person to the composer to create a track that is what I would usually just throw temp on and be like, oh, that's the music, So it's stuff like it was stuff like that I needed to learn, in which Chapman helped tremendously.
All right, so this feature, how'd it go?
We actually had it was a pretty, for a first feature, it was not too rough. I almost wish it was a little bit rougher, in the sense of like that. I wish I was aiming a little bit higher with it, because when I heard of The Evil Dead, for instance, like they had a rough fucking time over there. Just everybody living in this one place with all this heat, with all this blood, fake blood all over the place, and all these special effects stuff. I just that's the experience I really wish that we were going for, because what we did was I did a slasher movie, but it was this movie called The Black Tape, where the idea was there's a slasher, a killer that's making his own slasher movie. So the tagline was shot by me, cut by me, music by me, murder by me, now watch me. And it was made in the style of where we had this masked killer, and it was like very giallo Italian style of it was like found footage, but with like a giallo found footage. And the killer is editing the movie too. So we were fucking with the chronology of the movie as well. But essentially what it was like a murder mystery, like an Agatha Christie parlor room murder mystery. And it all took 90% of the movie took place in this one house. The two scenes that didn't take place in the house, one was in the Santa Monica hills, where we ran into a mountain lion, that was a tough day. And the other one was the Mojave Desert, where we ran into a thunderstorm, and that was with lightning and shit. And, we're way out there, and that was a tough day. But the other days were pretty for the most part, I was sitting there directing with a fucking cigar in my mouth the whole time. And to me, I wish I made it rougher. It's a good movie for what it is, but because it was this parlor room murder mystery with a slasher in it, I feel like I could have had more effects, more gore, all the good horror stuff. So I definitely learned a lot from it. It played the festival circuit and stuff. It won a few awards here and there, but it wasn't representative of the kind of movie that I wanted to technically call my first feature. I just felt like it was, because it had the found footage element in it. It had this very artsy fartsy Antonioni kind of locking it off, Michael Haneke kind of we're going to let the frame play in certain parts. There was a lot of, the one good thing that I really enjoyed learning on that was we did 22-minute takes and 25-minute takes, and we would just, all that coordination, that was great. That was the tough parts of that movie, because we had to have these long takes. But I still feel the lack of me being able to cut, because I locked myself into that aesthetic at the start. I was like, okay, the rule that we're going to have is we're not going to cut. We have to figure out a way how to get this killer to move this camera to come to a closer shot without him being spotted by one of the family in the house. And that was something that really fucked me, because I was like, I'm all about the cut. I need to have the cut for emphasis, or to go cut to a wide, cut to a medium when I need to. I cannot do this one long take kind of bullshit, which I feel it's great. It's in vogue and all that, but it's not my style. So I felt like that movie is cool as it was not my particular type of film that I would like to start off with. I even made sure that there was a couple of distributors who wanted to put it out. I pulled it because I was
really, you decided this. You treated it like an exercise.
Yes, exactly.
And were the long takes also? Was that a budgetary choice too? Though, was that a restriction? Because Lord knows you. Getting 20, 25 pages done in a take saves you a lot of, you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, definitely. But no, I thought I went into it like that with that in mind. But I realized, no, this is taking just as long as if you made a movie, if you cut. I mean, of course, you'd probably have to add like 2 or 3 days to the schedule, but I would have rather done that than do this whole thing where we just did these long takes. But I did learn a lot from doing the long takes because I feel like we still made it very dramatic and scary, but I just feel like it's just not my particular style that I would like to have, because I thought that that's what I wanted to have. And then maybe we'd show it at like a festival and everyone's like, oh, this is really cool. And then I'm sitting there and I'm looking around the theater and I'm like, my ambition to fucking be Michelangelo Antonioni of horror is not the greatest fucking ambition, because it works with certain crowds, but it is a very niche crowd. Whereas in my mind, I'm like, I want the popcorn horror. I want like fucking The Evil Dead or like Hereditary or The Conjuring. That's the kind of energy that's my go-to, really. Like that's the kind of movie I want to see. So ever since then, I decided don't ever lock yourself into some aesthetic, because that's the thing that you put yourself into that position. No one asked me to say we're going to do a movie with long takes. I could have done it without doing the long takes. So that was a very crucial lesson, because now I'm like, fuck it, anything goes. Like we have to go back to that whole idea of the French New Wave, which is like, you want to put a title card in the middle of a movie? Put it in the middle of the movie. You want to cut to some new set of characters in the middle? Cut to them. Just, have fun with it. Like, why make it boring for yourself?
Absolutely. So, all right, so that's cool. So the black tape, you learned a lot from it. And what came next?
So, I mean, the last thing I'll say about the black tape is that people will see it. I'm just going to make sure that it's the extra on a DVD.
So in other words, you're saving it as your ultimate gem of here's if you're a Ramone Menon fan, now you can go back and see what I was like right out of college, a little raw.
Yes, exactly. Because I feel like it still has a lot of the hallmarks. It's still got the Dario Argento influence. It's still got the Agatha Christie. It's still got like the Scream influence, all that shit, like Psycho, the Michael Haneke influence. But I'm saving it as an Easter egg on a Blu-ray. Like,
fair enough.
There it is. Fucking what is 80 minutes over there? Like, oh shit. Okay. So then what came next was I was recutting that movie a lot just to try to shorten it down. But then I realized, now it's time to make something else that's in the style that I really want to do. So I made this. I spent quite a few years like not making a movie because I wanted to like learn about production again, and I was kind of a little annoyed with myself for making a movie that is not representative of the style that I wanted to make. So I took some time off. I think it was like 2.5 years or something, 2.5, 3 years, where I just said, no, I'm not doing anything. I almost like was writing a lot, but I didn't want to film. But then I was like, you got to film. You got to shoot something. Like, come on. Like, just can't let one movie ruin it. I was watching this interview with Brian De Palma, and he said, well, it's just a fucking movie. You got to just make another one. And then immediately, as soon as I saw that interview, I was like, yeah, fuck it. I mean, this is the guy who made like Carrie, but he also made like Bonfire of the Vanities. like, but then he went and recovered and made The Untouchables. So I decided to make this movie called Once Upon a Time in a Haunted House, which was I would say the best way to put it is like it's a Conjuring meets Get Out, where
and the title gives away your love of classic cinema.
Oh yeah, because I was just like, I want to have the whole Once Upon a Time in the West, Once Upon a Time in America angle to it, and just kind of again narrow it down to again a contained location. So that story was about an undocumented immigrant that takes a job as the caregiver of a malevolent ghost at a haunted house. She knowingly goes there to take a job as this caretaker, even though it says you're going to be taking care of a ghost. And she's like, fuck, what bullshit, but okay. And it's a very high paying job. And they tell her, you're going to be locked in here for 30 days, but you're going to be paid very well. And she's like, sure. And she's undocumented. She's got no other resources. And she's trying to pay for her son's kidney operation. And so she's kind of stuck with no other choice. And she takes a job and then suddenly realizes once she's locked into the house that, oh, fuck, it's real. And what the ghost is making her do is what's really fucked up. It's making her lure these minorities into the house so that the ghost can feed off of them. So essentially, it's a vampire movie. We just never used the word vampire in it. This is the first time I'm actually saying that it's a vampire movie. But it was my idea was, what if we do the story of Dracula, but not from the perspective of Dracula, but from the perspective of Renfield. But Renfield is not this crazy fucked up like the dude from Mr. What is that? Dracula Dead and Loving It. Whenever I think of Renfield, I always think of Leslie Nielsen's assistant in Dracula Dead and Loving It. But it's more this undocumented immigrant that is desperate, and she's Dracula's assistant. So that's what that movie's about. And it played the festivals. And we made it fairly recently. We made it right before the pandemic started. So I feel like we stopped submitting it to a bunch of festivals after the pandemic hit. So I feel like I would love to try to take it back out there if possible.
Right. So you made it in 2019.
Yes.
And then the pandemic slammed into you as you were taking it out there.
Exactly. Because we completed it in, I think, August 2019. Yeah. And we were just about starting to submit it in. And then I'd gone back to India for a couple of months at that time. So I didn't want to submit it. I went to India in September and October 2019. I thought, okay, when I'm back, I'll start submitting. And then fucking this thing hit. And then all the festivals started closing down. And I was like, shit, there goes that. Which was very disappointing because I actually feel like that movie is very demonstrative. Sorry, I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly, but it illustrates the style that I like, which is. Right,
so you're proud. You're happy with that one, and
yes.
And actually, I was gonna say it. Even, I mean, I haven't gotten to see it. Haven't had the pleasure of seeing it, but listening to her role with the ghost or vampire, whichever you want to call it, is it sounds very relevant as we keep hearing about people who get wrapped up in assisting horrible people.
Oh yeah.
Hurting others. And that's a pretty, you're wrapping it into a horror film. You're actually bringing in some very relevant analogies to, whether it's the people who worked for Harvey Weinstein or
oh yeah,
Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, all the scenes, but yeah, I mean, it's the idea of are you an innocent person if you're an accomplice, if your job involves harming people?
Yeah, it's It was a story of basically because they had the whole border crisis going on at that time, and when you make it over from, like, say, Mexico to America, like, okay, we made it, but now what? And it's this fucking it's still rough. Yeah, we got away from whatever troubles were there back home, whether it's like dealing with like personal troubles or like cartel issues or just the place that you're in. But then once you're here in America, it's like, what next? Like, is it that much better for a person in our situation, which is you're undocumented and you have nothing to fall back on, and you have to almost start from scratch, and you're not even allowed to technically find legal work, right? So you're in this desperate situation. And I wanted to tap into that. And especially, the 2019, we know what was going on politically over here.
Yeah, I've been sitting here thinking to myself, do I want to use the T word?
Yeah, I know. I personally I really rather not say it, because I feel like politically, different people, different strokes for different folks, and it's fine. I just feel like if you can sneak some of that into a movie, not make a statement, but more ask a question, it's more interesting.
Absolutely. And it sounds like the film probably makes some, as someone who came to California from another country, as a third generation Californian, I like to think that California is well aware of the value of being global citizens and caring about the world and having an open door here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the country has very frequently made itself known in that era to be unfriendly towards immigrants.
Yeah, I'm a goddamn immigrant, so this is essentially a very horrific version of something that could have happened to me. I'm now, like, the film theory nonsense in my brain is already thinking, and I haven't even seen Once Upon a Time in a Haunted House, but I'm thinking, yeah, so the monster inside that house represents America, and the immigrant is forced to make ends meet, to work for something monstrous. Now that person has come here, it's you got some pretty solid analogies there. I just wanted to make a fucking scary haunted.
You just want to make a good horror film.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a haunted house movie. I know that's one way of saying it. I try to say all this shit just to make myself look smarter, which I'm not. But I'm dressing it up. But
you don't have to be smart to look smart. So
yeah, exactly.
That's what we all do at film festivals.
I know, it's all about, for me, it's all about just pretending, put on the facade of a Sherlock Holmes, but really he's just a fucking bumbling Inspector Clouseau.
Yeah, we walk around saying, well, I prefer the Italian New Wave to the French. And then all of a sudden people think, oh, so he must have seen a lot of movies.
Yeah, exactly. I usually, my response to that is I actually prefer the waves at, Venice Beach instead, if that's what you guys want to talk about. But to be absolutely real with you, my main aim is to actually make a killer, like, haunted house movie, because that's one of my favorite subgenres. And because of the way movies are sold and the way the audiences do want to feel like it's smarter now, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but I almost had to kind of pigeonhole this movie into something that, okay, we want this so-called, which I hate this fucking term, but that elevated horror thing. I'm like, I said all horror is fucking smart. It's just how you look at it. So I would say this was my response to that, to kind of be able to say that we're still trying for something more, but essentially it's a fucking haunted house movie. So,
which fucking hell goes back to your first experience walking in on your dad watching Amityville Horror, which might be one of the greatest haunted house movies ever made.
Exactly. I'm not saying that I achieved what I wanted to do with it yet. Like, I'm still figuring things out, but I'm always going to go for that. I'm always going to try to recreate that experience of how I felt watching the Amityville Horror can I do that again to myself? It's not even for the other people. It's honestly just for me. If everybody else is there, like, it's great, and then they're along for the ride, but it's more for me. Like, at the end of it, when I watch this movie, am I going to get that same feeling? We'll see.
And then the pay comes around next, right? So,
yeah.
So because of COVID, you just moved on?
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially because we were sitting around not doing shit from whatever it was, March of 2020. And everyone's like, oh, what do we do? And I was like I was like, oh, can I make a movie in my apartment? Can I do something, shoot a movie in the car? That's when I realized, like, fuck it. But again, don't get into that aesthetic if that's not what you want to do right now. I'm not saying that I won't do it eventually, but so at the end of 2020 is when I was like, okay, I think I know how to do this, where I essentially thought, okay, we need one person in the house with, so it's essentially a cast of one person. And if you're going to have another person, let it be the villain and let that person be masked. So now I was like, what's the best way to mask up someone and totally have them almost like hazmat suit? Put them in a giant fucking bat suit. Yeah. So I was like, that way he's covered. There's no social distancing taken to the next fucking level. So we planned it in such a way that it had to be one person in one house and the monster is the other person. And we filmed it at the end of 2020 during the second spike. And they were like, you people really don't give a shit about human life. And we're like, we do, but we also really want to make some cinema.
Yeah, and I mean, I was very. I'm pausing because I don't even know. Like, I'm straddling the fence, but you could use your intelligence and all the information about COVID, and you could be very responsible and make a film during COVID. Yeah, especially the way you're talking about it, and especially controlling. Yeah, it's and I took COVID very seriously. I had a loved one go through cancer treatment during COVID, which, talk about stressful.
Yeah,
but it doesn't mean that you couldn't have people work together and and have your whatever crew you need waiting outside where it's safer, and then so whatever. I felt like I had to address that. Whoever said you don't care about human life because you're making a film during COVID can fuck off, because it's not like you were like gathering 30 people in a bar and saying we don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, not at all. We were very responsible about it. Like, me and my co-producer Patrick, we were very responsible, and my cinematographer too. Like, we just whittled it down. I think we had a crew of like some 14 people, I think. And also we picked a location that had a lot of outdoor space around it so that they could go and wait outside. In exchange, marked out the territories where everyone can be, packed lunches, all that stuff, double masked. Even the actress, because of the makeup, she couldn't wear the face mask, so she had to wear the visor. So stuff like that. And everyone tested. Luckily, touch wood, knock on wood, we got away with it without no cases, even before, after, during. So we were very lucky. I thank the film gods for letting us get away with it at that time.
And in a way, I guess we'll avoid spoilers, but I certainly can share that there's a social media element to it, because you mentioned social media even in your log lines for it.
Oh, yeah.
And in that way, you had one person alone at home, and yet it feels like there's 20 to 30, 40 characters involved with all the comments and all the presence of social media in that house, and the presence of there's other people there, even if she's alone.
Yeah, that was actually part of the plan, because I was like, I'd love to make a movie with a shit ton of people, but how do we get that same vibe without having them there, which is what you pointed out, which was part of the urgency factor of the tale. Like, I was like, this shit should be, because one part of my mind is subtextually, I was thinking, how do I make a COVID movie without making it about COVID? Because that's what was just going on with me at the time. And I was like, what spreads faster than social media and lawsuits? I mean, what spreads faster than COVID and lawsuits was social media. And I was like, there we go. Because I'm a big fan of The Ring. I'm a big fan of It Follows. And I love that Final Destination where it's all like the curse passes on movie. And I was like, I want to do one of those. But I want to do it like Alien and The Thing, where this thing, the monster is constantly changing. Because that's the other thing about horror movies. I love the fact that when it's, I've been a big fan of like all those Val Lewton old black and white horror movies like Cat People and the Leopard Man and all of that shit, where they would show it in the shadow and always felt like it was morphing. And then you have movies like Alien, where it starts off with a small little fucking thing coming out of John Hurt's body and it turns into the xenomorph. Same thing in The Thing with the dog turning into and it becomes The Thing. I love it because it's like an Agatha Christie movie, just with, you know, Rob Bottin's crazy special effects. And I was like, I want to do that, but we have to do it within our budget and responsibly. So we hired our great special effects artist. His name is Robert Bravo. And I told him we need to make like 3 versions of this thing, at least this pay. And I said, whatever it is, it needs to end up as a giant fucking bat, because a giant humanoid bat. Because when I was young, I watched this movie called Basil the Great Mouse Detective, which is a Disney movie. And the main villain in that has this fucking sidekick that's a bat. And when I was a kid, that scared the shit out of me. And I always thought I need to make my giant bat movie. And they were like, oh, do you mean like Batman? I'm like, who gives a shit? And we're doing my version of Batman. So with that, and then also because I wanted to do allegory for COVID movie, I was like, there's that theory that bat soup fucked the world. So I was like, without leaning into it too much, let's just throw it in there.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, that is an interesting fact. Yeah, bats were getting a lot of heat.
Yeah, I was like, these cuddly little furry creatures. What the hell? You know, like why them? Why pick on these guys?
And you. I don't think it's a spoiler either if we say, like, you know, you keep your monster very mysterious. But I think I remember saying at the Q&A that like what we see, it's a good monster. Like for, you know, on the festival circuit, let's just say, I don't see a lot of great monsters. No insult to the indie film people, but most of the time, if you see the monster, you're like, oh yeah, that's might have been better if we hadn't seen that.
Yeah, I mean, that was also another thing that I wanted to make sure was I wanted it to be practical. I was like, so if you have to spend the money, which wasn't a lot at all. That's why you have to give a shout out to him, as Robert Bravo, our special effects guy. That's a suit. That's a guy in a suit. And the only thing that, you know, has some sort of CGI on it is the eyes, but everything else, it's practical. And there's, of course, pros and cons to that, because your shot design and everything has to be able to be slower and not as dynamic, because you have a practical thing that you have to move around. And my friend Daniele Manzin, who plays the Pei, he couldn't see shit. He was like, oh, I am blind as a fucking bat. You really wanted to go method on this shit. And I said, I guess. So that's one thing that I learned with this one. As great as practical is, you're going to have to tailor your directing style and aesthetic to that too. Because on the set, we had to cut a lot of setups, because we were like, oh shit, we can't do that. Can't make this fucker jump from here to there. And you know, we had to figure out all of that. You know, our whole climax shot is so different from what we originally planned. But luckily, with a good crew, thanks to the good crew who were patient and willing to tolerate my bullshit, we were able to get through it and figure out a good way of getting it done.
Well, and as a fan of the film, I think I could try to picture it the other way, but I think you were right to go practical, because it's a film that's actually very rich with effects, with what you do with chats and social media and stuff. So because there's so much of that on screen, I think it's great that there's nothing digital about your monster, because I think of the monster, I think our brain still picks up on it if it's
Yes.
a little digital. And then it would feel like, yeah, I think it was way more effective. I think you made the right choice, to be honest.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we hope we did. I personally like it because text, you can see the texture of the reality of it. And even till today, a lot of people are like, oh, I love how cool the VFX was for the monster. I'm like, well, that's no VFX. That's like
that means you like someone in a suit.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I have a lot of people, even at the festival circuit and all that, come and ask me like, hey, how did you guys create that monster so well in post? We were like, I pulled up a photo, I'm like, there it is. That's me, and that's the monster, and that's the actress with the monster. And it's honestly, even for the actress, it's better because she feels it, right? You feel the damn thing standing right there. You can react to it. It's not a tennis ball. It's not a empty green screen or whatever. I feel like if more cinema, which I feel like people are doing a lot more now, if more cinema did that, we'd be way better off for it.
I agree. So you had a good experience making it, and then you shot it during COVID, and then finally vaccines and shit hit the world.
Yeah,
you were able to go out in person with it.
Yeah, that was a blessing. Like it just so happened. Like again, thanks to the film gods at the right time. What fucked us with the previous one, with the haunted house one, actually saved us. It was almost like the reverse of how it happened, and I feel like I was so grateful to be out there and seeing other filmmakers, seeing their process, seeing their amazing movies, because that's who I learn a lot from, is not just like the film heroes of mine, but also just like practically talking to the up and comers, because that's who you're going to learn the most from. Like this, what's happening now. Yeah, you can look into history and use those tricks, but just hearing guys like Christian, or even recently I met this other amazing director named Kelsey Bowlig. She made this movie called Kickstart My Heart. If you haven't seen it, gotta watch it. And then even recently I saw this guy, Will Lee. He made a movie called Worms, where it's practically, they have this head exploding effect and all this shit coming out of this guy's head. And I was like, holy fuck, this is like the modern Scanners, and I was like, how the fuck do you do it? It's the magic of talking to these people after they've done these outstanding movies and seeing how do you figure it out. And I feel like the pay, I'm grateful for it. I still call it, like, I'm still learning. I don't think it's like the greatest movie. I think it's I think it's a good movie for what it is, but it's okay. I still feel like we've got a lot more to learn, me and my team, and we're looking forward to kicking ass with the next one that we're actually going to film at the end of the month.
But you are going to film and something else, because I recall you talking about the idea of the pay becoming a feature.
Yes, sorry, I glossed over that. We're developing the pay feature now. Can't say too much, but we're developing it. It's coming together. It's a very interesting thing because I'm trying to make sure that I don't lose certain elements that I really loved about the pay, because I really want to get into the whole fake news element, the whole idea of hoaxers and what is the truth and what isn't. Because I feel the short doesn't really touch in too much on that. It hints at it, because like it says, do you believe in the pay? But that's still a very esoteric way of putting it. So we're developing the feature now, and I'm making sure that I don't lose all the stuff that I like, but also make sure that it is going to be a fun Friday night popcorn movie.
Excellent.
And so I'm hoping to give some updates on that very soon for the feature version. And in the meantime, while we're developing that, I don't want to stop learning the directing side of things. So we're going to be doing another proof of concept, another balls to the wall fucking horror movie. Can't
Just
stop making
completely original, another original story.
Yeah. Another original story that is, again, going to be a proof of concept for a feature, because it just seems like we're on that train and we're like, okay, fine, fuck it. We're going to make another one of these.
And the great thing is, I mean, you happen to love horror and you love and you bring your personality to it because there's an element of there's a fun to your horror. You know, there's horror doesn't get the respect it deserves. I know everyone talks about that, but then it's also one of the most popular genres, right? Like,
oh yeah,
my God, I mean, horror. You know, this podcast gave birth to a TV series, right? And it's just films from the festival circuit.
wow,
and when Amazon said, you know, you can't be included with Prime anymore, you've got to charge. We went out to, you know, AVOD systems and they all said, oh, it's all short films. How many are horror?
Yeah.
And the answer was, well, it's mostly drama, comedy, and art house because it's from the festival circuit. Like, you know, it's not, you know, people who make horror often don't, you know, they hit horror only festivals. But actually, nicely, you hit like a lot of horror focused festivals, but then you hit the general circuit too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's good to have a mix if you can. Like, because I understand why the general circuits might not want to program certain things, just because, you know, it just might not play well with a particular type of audience. But I wish they did program it more, because I love the fact that sometimes somebody watches a movie and they're like, what the fuck was that? You know, like, we just saw this heartfelt movie about, you know, a brother and a sister reconnecting after many years. And then there's a movie that has a guy with his fucking head splitting open. I absolutely fucking love it when I'm in that kind of block, you know, where we're like, we have nowhere. You guys did it. You guys were able to keep us all guessing as to what the hell we're going to see. And
I can't remember what your block was, but we do that all the time where, you know, you start with like a light comedy and then you hit with some horror. And then, you know, the only thing you can't do in a block is if you've got a depressing, like, you know, a tragedy, that's got to play last, because you can't ask people to like be sad. Yes. And now let's scare you. Like, you got to scare them first, then they can be sad last. But yeah, I love that. I love a potpourri screening. You know, nothing bores me more than the idea. I mean, sometimes we have to do it, but
yeah,
showing 3 horror films in a row isn't as much fun as showing, you know, something artistic and crazy, and then a hilarious comedy, and then something super bloody, and then something super psychological. Like, it's just, I love it.
Yeah, and that's why I have like so much respect for you guys. I don't know how the fuck you guys pull it off. The festival directors all around, like, just figuring out the program. Like, it's so important, because you got to make sure they're all having a good time. Like, I'm just saying, like, what you just said about the tragedy playing last. I was like, I wouldn't have ever thought of that. But yet you guys know, because you've done this many times, and you know that's got to be the wave that the audience needs to ride. And it's amazing. It blows my mind. That's its own art form in itself. Just being able to program the right block for every type of festival.
It's fun. So this new one is going to be a short too, and you're going to hit the best. By the way, I was meaning to ask, can you even name how many festivals the Pay is played at?
Oh, Jesus. I think we're, because there's still some more coming. I think we're like at, like, I would say over 35 right now.
Over 35, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I can't say the exact number, but I know that it's in that range. I can't say 40 confidently, but I think it's,
But you're going to get there.
We'll see. Like, I mean, I'm hoping, let it do its thing. I would love to. I'm very grateful that, you know, people are liking it and connecting with it and inviting us to play at these amazing festivals. I'm always there, like, what the fuck are we doing here? You know, like, this is beyond our talent level. But I'm grateful for it. And, you know, even with the new movie, that's the other thing. We just want to try to make a different one. Like, totally, my approach is, I was very inspired by this whole idea, like, you know how like Stanley Kubrick is like, I'm not saying I'm anywhere close to that guy, but how he just challenged himself to make a new type of movie every time. And I was like, I'm not nearly as talented as that. I don't think I'll ever be as talented as that. But what can I do within my world? And I decided that my approach is try to make a different subgenre within the horror genre. That's my aim. I hope I can pull it off. I don't know if I will, but that's the aim. Like that's why I started with the slasher movie, did the haunted house movie, now did with the pay, did a monster movie, and then now the next one is a folk horror. So it's a totally different style, but I hope you guys enjoy it. If you don't, well, pretend you do.
Well enough. No problem there. Well, look, I don't mean to pressure you, but I expect to enjoy it. I expect if at the very least, I expect you to infuse it with your own talent and your own personality, and for it to be a fun ride.
Yeah,
I mean, you have expressed you want your films to kick ass, scare people, and be fun. And honestly, that's just. I have a 14-year-old and she loves horror. Actually, it's truly because of her that I've learned to appreciate horror, because it was about 2 years ago when COVID first started.
Yeah.
And I had never really been much of a horror guy. And I grew up in the 80s. So like I was kind of chicken shit to go see Friday the 13th and Halloween when they first came out. Because that was like my high school years or whatever. But this kid made me sit down and watch every Friday and Saturday night. We watched 1 or 2 horror movies during COVID. And nice. I just learned to appreciate, and what you're saying is 100% true. There's within the umbrella, under the horror umbrella, is every possible film. From art house experimental to drama to comedy to everything. Yeah, you can do everything in that genre.
Oh yeah, no, it's good that it almost takes the imagination of a younger person to almost spread that kind of joy, right? Like, I mean, like how you're saying your 14-year-old is getting you to say, like, look, the possibilities of this particular genre are like endless. You can make the action horror, you can make the, like you said, art house horror. Like every genre can be thrown in. It's just tonally. Like to me, There Will Be Blood is a fucking horror movie. You know, it's this very out there kind of horror movie, but tonally, it's a fucking it's like
there's a good argument that his lead character is the shark.
Yeah, 100%. Like he just talks like John Huston, you know.
For real, yeah. And we do live in the horror renaissance. I think has been going on for a while now. But yeah, you mentioned. What did you mention? You mentioned Hereditary and stuff, but there's I think Midsommar is an art house film disguised as horror, right? I mean,
yeah, it's so weird. The Midsommar is a art house movie, but it's also following the idea of a slasher movie. Like all of them are getting killed off in. That's what I love about it. Like he's still making.
Yeah, it is Friday the 13th, right? They're at a camp. They're at the equivalent of a camp. They're out in the middle of nowhere, and they're getting killed off one by one.
Yep.
And yet, it's got all the elements of an artsy fartsy film that would play at the Laemmle here in LA.
Yeah, and that's why everyone loves it, because they know that this is packed in all this stuff. It's packed in the idea of a breakup movie. It's packed in the idea of like being hypnotized into falling into a group mentality, and at the end of it is, like you said, a camp that people are getting killed off at, and I feel like that's a movie that will stand the test of time just because it's playing with all this stuff. And same thing like movies like There Will Be Blood, or even like The Shining and all that stuff. They're all horror movies in their own way. So that's why I've always been fascinated with this genre. Like even, what was that other movie? Uncut Gems, I feel, has a very horror feel. It's just a self-destructive, but it's not obvious, but it does feel like a horror movie to me. So I feel like there's plenty to go with the genre, and I'm glad you guys at Sherman Oaks Film Festival are like absolutely championing this. There was that, I forgot the name of the movie, the black and white movie that you guys played. It was
was it called What Happened?
yes, the one with in the farm with the horses.
Yeah,
And,
and actually that was Stephen Ohl, I think, and he submitted that as art house experimental.
Yeah.
Although it clearly might take place in a zombie apocalypse, but you don't see a zombie. You just know that he and his girlfriend are living on a farm. I believe when you see it's an Indian family's home.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's just a little slice of life in a really horrific situation.
Yeah, I felt like I loved that movie. And when I was like, this is a fucking horror movie. Again, like there's a case to be made. A lot of these, especially the newer films, they're seeing that, oh yeah, see, this horror genre is popular. We can still do that, but without even having to lean into the obvious tropes of it. And
and it's broken free of what I was talking about when I was a kid. Horror was pretty much just slasher. It was just the world of slasher. It was the world of Wes Craven, I think, got a little creative with it.
Yeah, to be honest, it's been there. I think it's just those movies were just not given any credit. There was this movie in the 80s called Possession with Sam Neill and Isabella Gianni. And that's a horror movie, but it's actually just masquerading as a goddamn domestic drama. And there's this other one called Angst too, another like 1982. Like there's a lot of those movies that were there. It just no one was giving them the credit that they deserved at that time. So I'm just glad like that kind of stuff is now in the forefront rather than in the back with the porno tapes and shit.
Absolutely. Well, it's good to hear you're staying productive.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you write all the time and then pick the ones you like to take further?
Yes. I'm writing a lot, but I'm also like, just getting hammered a lot as well. And then if something sticks out, I'm like, see there, that thing. To be honest, I do a lot of like reading of the news and just reading like weird like articles about like psychology or like why certain things are the way they are. And like it's that kind of stuff that kind of fascinates me. And then suddenly I'll be like, aha, look at that thing. That could be a horror movie. I'm always like looking for the thing that excites me to put in as the base of the concept. So I almost feel like when I'm actually writing, it's always when I've already got the idea. Like I never find the idea when I'm actually writing. I almost feel like I find the idea somewhere else, and then I need to get in and figure out the idea and figure out the approach to the idea. That's where the writing part comes in. And I feel like so far it's helped. I wish I was a little bit more prolific, to be honest. I see some of my director friends who are like, they shoot like 2-3 movies a year and it's amazing. And they're all great. And I'm like, how the fuck do you do that? And I want to try to learn to get into that. That's what I was talking about earlier. I'd love to just grab a camera and go shoot the LA New Wave movie. Once I work up the courage to do it, it'll be at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival. It'll be
you will release your inner Truffaut.
Yeah, I have to. I mean, I'm not a Truffaut fan. I'm more of I like Godard better out of the two, but I felt he was just more inventive. Like, if you just compare.
I was just trying to name drop because of the Hitchcock book.
Oh, yeah.
You know what's embarrassing? I'll say this, even though it'll make everyone despise me. When I was an undergraduate, the Truffaut Hitchcock book, I had to purchase it for a film studies class, and it still might be in the wrapper. So, and I think it's on my bookshelf because it looks nice on the bookshelf. So I'm gonna have to pick that fucker up and read it, obviously.
Oh, I'm telling you, just drop some acid and Open it up. Like I'm telling you, you'll have a
But
great.
now you're just describing an average Wednesday.
Yeah, see, now that's because I know you and the good folks at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival too well. You guys always ensure that you have a good time while ensuring we have a good time.
Well, thank you for saying that. It certainly is a goal. I mean, if it needless to say, if running a film festival isn't fun, then maybe you should just give up on life, because there may not be much money to be made in it, but if you can't enjoy watching films and talking about them with the people who made them, and enjoy, I don't see what could be a more fun way to whittle one's time away than, especially because I love films like yours and all the stuff you saw at Sherman Oaks Film Festival, because it's coming from the right place. Everyone is making films because they have a passion to do it. Like, no one sat around and said, what would be the best way to exploit my intellectual property? What are we going to do with the IP? I know. It's like, no. You were like, no. I want to make a film that I want to see.
Oh yeah. That's that. I feel like that's one of the main lessons I learned from making that feature. I was just like, okay, stop thinking about the fucking audience. Start thinking about you as the audience first, because you're the first person that this has to pass the lens through. So I feel like that's the danger that a lot of people are falling into with this whole commercialized 3-act structured problem, which I mean, I'm a big fan of it, but I feel like it's killing a lot of creativity because people are scared. They're like, will the audience like it? Yeah, you don't want to be self-indulgent. I've seen some fucking self-indulgent shit and, I never want to watch it again. But I'll remember that self-indulgent crap way more than a very good, well-made, but follows the rules horror movie or commercial movie that I'm probably not going to remember in a year.
Right. And just in the same way that nerd culture has now become culture.
Yeah.
Like, I think streaming, because it allowed them to try more things, I think now people are allowed to be weird. Like when we talk about you mentioned, at least 1 or 2 Jordan Peele films. And Jordan Peele, actually, everything he does, there's an element of weirdness to it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I just, my favorite of the 3, I think, is Us, because I cannot believe he got away with it.
I cannot believe that he got away with it, but for the total opposite reason. I'm almost like that. That to me, it was so shocking how I was like, probably the less said, the better. I really liked the first half. And then the second half takes this absolute fucking nosedive, in my opinion. That
I just marvel at it. But the fact that no one would have said yes to that, unless it was like 1972, maybe.
Yes,
correct. Like, it's the first time in 50 years that you can just go ahead and make a strange film, and audiences didn't respond to that one as well as Get Out, but Get Out's got a crazy freaking idea. Performing brain surgery to switch bodies with people. That's, my 14-year-old, when I showed it to her, because I wanted her to see it before we went to see Nope.
Yeah.
Actually, the film's inspired lots of great conversations between us. But first thing she said is, can you do that? I'm like, no. Absolutely not. And then it led to a really great conversation actually about, race, because she's like, why are they only targeting Black people? And then we got to have like a really honest conversation about history and how Black bodies have been used by white culture to build this country. And just,
it's so weird because I feel like genre is that great vehicle to allow you to get into those kind of conversations, right? Like, I mean, because he made that movie Get Out with such freedom of storytelling. Yeah, he contained it. That's why he was like, I can't spend too much money, but he had the total freedom of his imagination to go absolutely fucking crazy. And I think that's probably one of the best first features ever because of how much he just let himself cut loose. It's like same thing like Paul Thomas Anderson stuff, like all that. He's another guy that just doesn't let what everybody else is doing constrict him, like, and you can tell these guys are competing against their contemporaries in very knowingly that I have to make something that's way better and stands out compared to my contemporary.
Yeah, and they're totally willing to do weird, strange, unusual things. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Well, the next podcast we're going to discuss other filmmakers a lot. So
yeah, definitely.
So, anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
No. Actually, really quickly, I forgot to mention this. During the pandemic, right before the pay, I did a pilot for a comedy show in India, but I directed it remotely. I was the only person on the crew that wasn't there. Everybody else was there. I directed it over Zoom. It was about the worst police station in India. So it was like The Office meets Reno 911, but with a bunch of crazy, fucked up Indian people. And it was I wouldn't say tribute but I wanted to do my Groucho Marx, my Rowan Atkinson, Blackadder, and my love for the Pink Panther and Peter Sellers and all that shit. So I kind of took all that stuff and threw it together. It's called The Station. I can't wait for people to see it. I'm sure I'll put it out soon, but I just wanted to make sure it doesn't interfere with this whole horror trajectory that I'm going on.
I'm glad to hear you are having fun and making different things. And wow, what a challenge to direct remotely.
It was brutal, but I was drinking White Claws the whole time. So they all said, "Hey, what's that cool thing that you're drinking?" I said, "It's a new type of Red Bull." Thanks for asking.
And I got to say, I'm a huge fan of Reno 911. I thought that show was hilarious. So
it is. So one day I'll bring it over to your place. We'll have some whiskeys and you watch it, and then you'll hate me forever after that.
I will not hate you for more than a minute or two.
Yeah, but I really appreciate you, doing this.
Yeah. Well, do you want to name? Do you got a website, or are you mostly just social media?
Mostly just social media, because I'm a very lazy human being when it comes to the online stuff. But it's my Instagram is at Ramone. That's RAMONE Menon. That's MENON. So that's one word, at Ramone Menon on Instagram.
And honestly, you don't have to call yourself lazy, because in this new world, no one gives two shits about a website anymore. I mean, I always feel, I'm always shocked when someone writes to the film festival and sends an email and goes, "Oh, you know what? There's an error there's a typo for one of my cast members' names on your website." And I'll be like, "You looked at the website?" No one looks at the website. And by the way, our web guy copy and pastes the info you give us. So guess what? You have the typo, but we'll fix it.
I'm glad you give it to him straight, though.
All right. Well, so that's good. So, and I'll put in the show notes for this, people, if you didn't pick up on how to spell Ramone's name, which is actually pretty easy, RAMONE at Ramone Menon. But I'll put that in the show notes with a link so they can hit it. And I will now rattle off the social media and websites, the useless websites that no one looks at for this podcast and the film festivals. First, I'll say, I think I mentioned at one point, that this podcast, Discover Indie Film, you can go learn more about it if you go to discoverindiefilm.com, and it's at DIF Wins on social media. And I talked to, our festivals, Sherman Oaks Film Festival and Film Invasion LA, they have fairly long Q&As, but they're still really limiting. And, and I have to hand it over to the audience and let them ask stupid questions instead of just asking the questions I want to hear. So I started this podcast and I got to know so many filmmakers, and everyone who made a feature. The features ended up on streaming, and all the shorts ended up not on streaming, normally just YouTube, where they're 1 in a trillion videos. So this podcast gave birth to the Discover Indie Film TV series on Amazon Prime Video. So if people want to be nice, Go watch it. Season 6 released today, of all things, the day we're recording, not the day this comes out. But so you can do that. And if you want to learn more about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, which Ramone, I probably should just take your comments about it and just use that to promote the festival, because it's so kind of you to say what you said. But if people want to learn about it, we hold it every November, and you can learn about it at ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. And the sister festival is every June. That's Film Invasion Los Angeles, and you can learn about it at FilmInvasionLA.com, and it's at Film Invasion LA on social media. And, I always call an audible on this. This time I'll mention it. There is a third, because I'm glutton for punishment, I started not a festival, but a movie night that sort of had a focus. It was called THC Cinema, and we held it on 4/20/2022. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about, obviously it's just films that are either so hilarious or so visually stunning that they're great to watch stoned. So if you want to, we're holding it again on 4/20/2023. So go to thccinema.com or at THC Cinema to learn more. I got to tell you, it's a nice way to spend a day. Hour and a half of short films. You just sit down and enjoy them. It goes from crazy, visually stunning music videos from France, and then a hilarious film shot here in the Sherman Oaks area. I don't know, it's a good shit. All right, so anyway, I mentioned everything I'm supposed to mention. Ramone, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Smoke some weed and join the THC Film Festival.
Join the THC Film Festival. It is what it is. I couldn't help it. I watch about 1,500 films a year, and I watch them all sober. And I watch them sober, and then at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival, I'm sitting there. Last year was 8 days. This year will be 6 days. And I sit there in the theater, and every once in a while I go, this film would be really good if I'd taken an edible an hour ago. So I wanted to see if I could prove the proof of concept in it. Just like your films are proof of concepts.
Yeah.
THC Cinema is.
Hell yeah. You got to do it. And I'm glad you do it. I'm going to be out there supporting it and smoking a whole bunch of weed with you. So.
Hopefully, we had a guy come last April, and he said, "You know what? I don't smoke, but I brought a 6-pack of beer." So there you go.
That's great.
All right. Well, thank you again, Ramone.
Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
And thank you, everyone who's listening.